Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for October 21st, 2019. We'll begin with the special order calendar. Continued hearing items. Item number 1, 42929BZ, 4801 Kings Highway, Brooklyn.
Okay, they requested an adjournment. This will be the third adjournment, so I'd like a certified letter sent to owner and applicant stating that it'll be the last adjournment. And of course, that a full submission based on the last review sessions and hearings. The last one was in May. Needs to be submitted on time.
Item number 2, 28552BZ, 30-14 34th Avenue, Queens.
Okay, they submitted drawings showing the dumpster was relocated. They do need to dimension the planting bed areas. It's a minimum of 4 feet wide, and specify the landscaping, which must be to create a dense buffer between the residential property lines and the site, especially the portion that's near the dumpster, because there's a dumpster very close to the residential lines. There's this 30.3 number sort of floating around in the middle of the planting bed. I don't know what that is. I can't tell if it's a dimension. It points to 2 things, but I don't know what those things are. The drawings are a little bit strange. There's a lot of kind of odd notations on them, which may be related to gas station work, but there is a note that says it's a DEP curb at the handicap ramp. I think that means a depressed curb, but I don't know why that would exist on a handicap ramp. You don't have a depressed curb. The ramp goes to grade, right? So I don't think that's correct anyway, but I don't know if that's what it means. And we also wanted to know what we had asked the last hearing to know what the elevation at grade is versus what this thing is ramping up to. Is it just ramping up a curb, like a normal sidewalk, or is it handling a slope? The lumen spread diagram was clarified. We had a comment. Commissioner Otley Brown noted there was a light fixture facing into the residence, and I don't know what happened to that. There is one light that's designated as A-1 at the corner on 34th Avenue, which is shown as mounted at 12-foot high, which is high, and can't tell which way it's facing and why it needs to be that high, and if it is, then it needs to be shielded. Signage was shown as being reduced to comply with the C1 regs. They're taking out a lot of the signs. The wall of the adjacent property is covered in graffiti because that wall is accessible from this site, both at grade and from the roof. So it wouldn't be covered in graffiti but for this property. So I think the applicant should remove or paint over the graffiti, of course, with the permission of the owner, adjacent owner, but really it's an eyesore. And I'm curious, this is a conversation, if the 38-foot wide curb cut is justified if it's only to be used by the fuel trucks. This curb cut was supposed to have been reduced at the prior approval by this board, and it never was. And they're arguing to legalize it, but the only purpose of it seems to be for fuel truck access, and I don't know if that's adequate to justify. Doesn't the fuel truck make kind of K-turns, 3-point turns, things like that in order to get into position? I don't know, because we don't often see such wide driveways, and we've also learned from DOT recently that they're trying to reduce the width of curb cuts and quantity, so that's what I'm asking. And we talked about removal we talked about relocation of the vacuum station. It's not shown at all now on the drawings, so I don't know if it's being eliminated. The air pump is shown, so
I think air pump is the vacuum station.
Oh, but air pump would be to put air in your tires.
Yeah.
So there was a point where someone, it might have been you, who saw that there was an
Right.
air pump and a vacuum on site,
Right.
and it wasn't shown on the drawings. So now the question is the vacuum being eliminated? Because it's still not shown on the drawings.
Well, it's still there on the site.
Right, but this is work that needs to be done, so,
No, okay, yes, thanks for clearing me. I forgot air station is to check, monitor the pressure on the,
yeah, to fill the
right.
tires.
I had one additional question to what you have stated, which is, there's a note that says, additionally, there are 2 existing curb ramps on the corner, which were not shown on the BSA approved plan. As mentioned earlier, these curb cuts are utilized by both personal automobiles, fuel trucks, and are important for the general flow in and out of. This is the statement of fact. I don't know which 2 curb cuts they're referring to, because there is
Curb ramps or cuts?
well, that's what I'm not sure. Is it curb ramps or curb cuts? There are 2 curb cuts, so I'm not sure if those are the same as the curb ramps. I'm assuming it is, but then we need to be consistent with the language, because there aren't any ramps.
Yeah, there are. So at the corner, there are the classic handicap ramps, right? That's just supposed to be for pedestrians, right? And then there are the cuts for the vehicles.
Right.
So,
It's not clear from the statement which one they're referring
Okay.
to, but since they've said that it is utilized by personal automobiles and fuel trucks, I'm assuming they're referring to
the cuts.
the cuts. So I just need that clarification. And with regards to the truck,
The fuel truck, you
the
mean?
fuel truck, the problem with the fuel truck is the diagram that they submitted, which is P3. The access of the fuel truck, I believe, can only be from 34th Avenue, because from 31st Street, because of the elevated viaduct, it is not possible for the trucks to make that turn onto the fuel tank, where the fuel tanks are. So the only access point is from 34th Avenue, and I would also like clarification, the reason for that length of that curb cut is to allow only the fuel truck to kind of almost come parallel to the site.
Right.
That's really what it is.
That's what it seems when you look at the car maneuverability. They don't need that width at all.
Right.
So my question, because I don't know really the history of how we address these curb cuts, are we always allowing for extra wide curb cuts just for fuel trucks? Seems to me when we see wide curb cuts, it's also because there's no way for the car to get itself onto these lots. So then you really understand why you need, like, it's an egress and an entrance. But in this case, it's solely for the fuel truck, it seems. And the site's not big enough really to handle fueling, I assume, of trucks. It doesn't sell diesel on site, so that's a question.
I mean, my only thoughts regarding shortening the curb cut is that if indeed the truck needs it, they're gonna go over the sidewalk and depress the curb anyway.
Yeah.
And that's gonna result in a broken sidewalk. So if they're gonna present to us that they need that kind of leeway on the curb cut to ensure safe access of the site, then I would be inclined to support it, because the truck is gonna go over a sidewalk anyway.
Right.
And over time, it's gonna degrade the sidewalk.
Even if it's a steel edge on the
It's
curb.
heavy.
Yeah,
Very
they're heavy.
vehicle, yeah.
It's actually not for this hearing, but it is a question to ask of DOT, because we are learning that they want to reduce the amount and width of curb cuts, but what do you do about that reality where on however often a fuel truck comes, I don't know, it's needed, and otherwise cars are going to use it because it's there, right? Okay.
The only comment I have in addition to what is said is about the lightning diagram, the luminant. And I see that they provided some contours for the FC values. But if you look at the southern western corner of the site, you can see that the values are 12.8, 21.8, and then if you go further south, it's 3.5. but immediately west of the property line, it drops to 0.1. I'm not sure why is that.
Because there's a
This
building. I think it's because there's a building. So we asked them at the last hearing to clarify where the light would be blocked by a building. And so then they put the buildings in. And I think the bigger, other concern was there's one window
Yes,
overlooking the roof.
at the corner of the building.
Yes, so if that light level affects that one window, that's a bad thing, obviously. But if it's just shining against a wall, it's okay.
The reason I'm asking is actually, if you look at the location of that window at the corner of the building, if you look at the diagram that's provided, you're gonna see again 0. And I'm not sure if 0 here is accurate. Right next to the 0, you have 12.8, 21.8. And then on the vertical surface, or I'm not sure if these readings supposed to be in plan.
Yeah,
So is it really 0 next to the 21.8 and 12.8? And if the answer is yes, because these are like the horizontal projection, how about the vertical one at the window? So when I looked at this and I looked at the same at the southern corner, I was like skeptical about the actual values, especially at the entrance of the house.
yeah,
Could be a
Right.
shield, could there be a
Yeah.
shield?
If it's a shield, it should be explained. I did look at the letter from the architect, and it doesn't provide explanation other than we performed analysis. We believe that the previously submitted plan is accurate. So if they have done some analysis, I believe it would be explained in the letter that could have been like more clear for us.
yes, okay. And also drawings should always show if there's
Yes,
shielding.
yes.
Right.
The only thing I would add is the site is very messy. There are cars all over the sidewalk on that site. And I visited recently, and I still noticed the cars on the sidewalk, and we did mention it before.
So we need some kind of operational plan to keep the cars off the sidewalk. So we need to hear from the owner how they're going to handle that, right?
So you want the owner to appear tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay. Notice to applicant. Owner should be here tomorrow.
Okay.
Move on? Item number 3, 13887BZ, 21836 Hillside Avenue, Queens.
Okay, an adjournment was requested due to a family tragedy of the applicant. This will make the 5th adjournment, and I don't see any record of a letter having gone out from us to the owner and applicant after the 3rd or 4th adjournment. We have been asking repeatedly for the same things and not receiving them. So I'd have to say owner and council now need to be notified that this will be the last adjournment and that all requested work must be completed by that time. And we can go through the notes. I'm just gonna, we've been asking for a complete set of legible photos showing all site improvements done and a dumpster enclosure. We need revised plans to reflect the landscaping and the dumpster. So specification of the landscaping and the dumpster. And there's a brick wall. Our compliance officer went in August and took a good set of photographs because we've been unable to get good photographs from the applicant. And in August, it shows the brick wall more than in need of repair. It's actually on a verge of collapse. There's sections of the brick that have separated from the rest of the wall, and so extremely dangerous. The asphalt, those photos also show, and we talked about this a very long time ago, the asphalt was resurfaced in a portion and was striped, but then some parts, on some parts of the site, and then it wasn't resurfaced on the rest, and we asked them to do this a long time ago, and we never got any response. Yes?
On Friday, the applicant made a partial submission to show that there was some progress. I know there was a treatment done to the surface and restriping again.
Okay, I didn't see the submission.
I'll double check. I know only because they were submitting the hard copy, and I happen to see that, but I can't
Okay.
speak to the digital copy.
Okay, so the other
What's the
things that
number?
needed to have been done, curbs should have been, so there was some resurfacing of the asphalt that was done before. So this is from photographs taken by our compliance officer, right? And it shows the asphalt is actually spilling over the property line onto the sidewalk. And that's not how you install asphalt. It has to be installed with curbs, right, that keeps it in place. So that's not well installed. They did show wheel stops in front of the parking spaces. But again, as I say, the balance of the area was not resurfaced based on those August photographs. Yeah. So I don't know if something was submitted on Friday that we didn't see.
I don't see anything in the file.
Yeah, I don't have an email either.
Yeah, so.
I'll double check. I'm sorry.
Okay, because it may be old photographs. So the problem was, we had photographs submitted, I don't know when that was, in May or something like that, that were illegible in May. So, and we've been asking for this repeatedly, so I think a very strongly worded letter needs to go to the owner, that they need to take this seriously, because we can deny this application. It's been in hearings for more than a year, March of 2018. It's inexcusable.
All right, we'll look
Okay.
for the information on Friday, we'll disseminate it to the board. I
Okay.
don't see anything else. Carl said he submitted some things. Item number 4, 13292BZ, 3948 Amboy Road, Staten Island.
A proposal for a fire alarm system was submitted, so fire department should speak tomorrow to how they prefer to move on this, because they asked us to hold up until they've reviewed the situation. The applicant stated, no, the fire department stated at the last hearing that an Alt 2 could be filed to install this. I'm not sure what's happened on that. I also don't see a resolution on the dumpster locations. The dumpsters must be stored in an enclosure, and there should be compactors, as there are far too many dumpsters being stored on the site. This is a banquet hall, which disposes of perishable food products regularly, so they also need refrigerated trash storage, none of which is being shown on the drawings. The photos show a shabby fence slatting that needs to be corrected. They were also supposed to have installed landscaping to replace the tree stumps and repair the asphalt. The cover letter says that some type of work cannot happen due to sewer repairs. They're not explaining where the sewer repairs are taking place, what that has to do with the landscaping or the repair of the asphalt, nothing. I actually don't understand where the sewers work is being done. It implies that the parking lot is not presently functional, because the asphalt resurfacing is the parking lot, as is the landscaping. So I'd like our compliance officer to visit the site and take photographs, because we're not doing very well with the applicant's photographs.
Right, so this is-
So could you, somebody send a note to Ted to go visit this site, please? Anybody else
Okay.
on this?
Okay.
Anybody else? No?
Item number 5, 18896BZ, 444 Soundview Avenue, the Bronx.
Oh, sorry. No, okay, never mind. Okay. All right, plans were revised to pick up corrections requested, although frankly, out of frustration, I don't understand why I can't seem to accomplish a dumpster enclosure that has a roof like the storage room behind it and a real door, which is what I said over again, and I thought the architect was going to do. Instead, it's a wall the height of a portion of the storage area and no roof and a partial gate.
Wouldn't that add to floor area? Can they do that?
They have plenty of room. So, yeah, it would add to floor area, but they have plenty of room. So the notes also don't show the sidewalk curbs to be replaced according to DOT standards with steel curb edges, which is something we talked about a long time ago. And I know you need a permit for that. Anybody else?
New cases, item number 6, 82259BZ, 1774 Victory Boulevard, Staten Island.
Okay, so we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends approval. As far as I can tell, this is the same application as was amended in 2014 and extended in 2017, except that the enlargement is no longer proposed. All other site improvements are in the same locations and same scope. The applicant should alert us to any differences. The only difference that I identify in trying to figure out what the differences are, this is that where's Waldo type thing, is the addition of 2 parking spaces and removal of 2 proposed street trees. The street trees should be put back on the drawings. And the planting bed width at the west lot line has to be dimensioned to a minimum of 6 feet. Lighting levels have hot spots along the property line shared with the residential property. They need to install light shields or otherwise deal with that hot spot, those hot spots. Other comments?
Again, it sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes this property does have cars parked on the sidewalk.
So we need an operational plan.
Item number 7, sorry. 200-98BZ, 633 3rd Avenue, Manhattan.
We have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials and of posting notice in the lobby of the building. Community Board recommends conditional approval. This Community Board always prefers a 5-year as opposed to a 10-year term for these PCEs. The special permit expired on April 30th, 2018, and the renewal application was filed on April 25th, 2019. Under our rules, since filed more than 30 days after the expiration date, proof of continuous use is required. A specific request for a waiver of our rules under section 1-07.3B2, which is different than what was requested, right, must be made, and it must describe the substantial prejudice that would result if the waiver were not granted. It's not the detriment, it's the prejudice that would be granted. I'd also like to understand the reason for the delay in obtaining a C of O. This was a legalization in 1998. No C of O was provided with the application and should have been. But BIS shows a 2001 CO issued with a PCE at the cellar level. Nothing is shown at the sub-cellar, and no mention of a BSA action is on the drawing, is on the C of O. I need to explain that. The section on EP-1 indicates the PCE is at the cellar, while the plans at EP2 and EP3 indicated is in the sub-cellar, which is it. Note that the plans are partial floor plans, A and B, so you put them together. It's not a double height space. And we need the total size of the PCE. That's not indicated anywhere. Show the location also of the main entrance from the street and fire egress to the street on the first floor plan, and show the ADA access to all levels. And we don't yet have fire department's comment on it, I don't think. Anybody else?
No, that was my thought on the plans.
Plan A has a massage room, so they should give licenses if there is massage here.
The statement of facts on the first paragraph, it says that, and that confused me actually, it says the subject premises is a condominium, and then it described the building as 41 story plus cellar. Is that possible? Is there any condominium, commercial?
Sure.
Okay.
I have the special permit, but I didn't see an application for a waiver.
Correct. So that's a waiver under our rules.
They also
Correct.
need to request a waiver under our rules of the time to obtain a CO
Oh, okay.
and state that rule in their papers.
Paying a fee?
Which is the
They're paying another
section
fee?
under our rules?
1-07.3D2.
And pay the fee, as Tony.
Right, waiver of CVO? Waiver of the rules for CVO? Or they've included?
One waiver fee will cover
CO,
both
okay.
both waivers.
So they have to pay for just the... They paid the waiver already? Oh, okay. Double check.
3D2 as opposed to 3B2. B2 is for,
3B2,
Is for filing
which
late.
they need to request, they need to state the standard for it, is for time to extension of term.
yes,
And
okay.
D2, which they also need to request, is for time to obtain a CO.
Okay.
Item number 8, 27400BZ, 134 East 38th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application and notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends approval. The variance expired on February 27th, 2011, so proof of continuous use is required. The proof was provided. I don't believe, but happy to discuss, the real property tax bills establish the use. They only establish ownership, and then you could rent it to another use, right? And also similarly, the water, sewer bills don't show the name of the payor, which is often the landlord, unless it's like a net lease. So though, I don't think those work, but there are Con Ed bills that were sent to Hudson Bay, excuse me, Hudson Bay Music, Inc., which is a music publisher, for all of 2013, including January 2013. So that's less than 2 years from the expiration date. And then we have all of 2014, 15, and then it jumps to 18 and 19. There's a statement printout from Con Ed that shows electric use and payment for all of 2017, but they just don't have the bills, the individual bills. So I think that's establishing it. Do you agree?
I would consider it establishment based on the Con Ed bills, and also the water sewer bills do show the usage.
The active use.
Yeah, whereas I agree with you on the Department of Finance property valuation and tax bills and account history doesn't show active use.
Okay. But the water bills, as a standalone, don't establish who's using the water.
Right, but
Right?
it does establish at least that there is use
Use,
of the
yeah.
building. Because there is a variation in the amount of water used each
Right.
quarter.
Okay. And then, in terms of they did request a waiver of the rules, but they didn't explain why denial of an extension would cause substantial prejudice, which is really just a detail that could be discussed, I think, at the hearing. I don't think there are any other open issues, unless there are. Anybody else, other open issues?
Just I haven't seen a firm map submitted, so.
Okay. This is an extension of term. Not really sure that the firm map is so relevant at this point, you know? It's an extension of term that's already occupied.
Item number 9, 5908BZ, 591 Forest Avenue, Staten Island.
Oops, sorry. The little dial is going around. Okay, here. We have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearings to officials. Community Board recommends approval. We have DOI since this is a change in operator. We don't yet have fire department. Anybody else?
I didn't see a signage analysis form, even though I believe the signage is 44 square feet, but it doesn't say if that's the total or if they just made an error.
Okay.
So you want to sign analysis form?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to note for the board, they're also proposing a change in the hours of operation, which were a prior condition. as well as the interior layout of the PCE, and they're eliminating massage services. They also filed for a waiver, but failed to include the recitals as required by Rule 1-07.3B2.
So-
Continuous use and substantial prejudice.
Okay. Oh,
Maybe we should put out a notice somewhere so that everybody knows what to do.
so wait a second. So this expired February 14th, 2018, and they submitted it, August 24th, 2018. So they needed to add the waiver request. And proof of use. So in that case, they should, and they have to provide the signage, and they need to provide the waiver request, substantial prejudice, and proof of use. So therefore,
And proof of continuous use?
yeah,
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm sending
Yeah,
the right
okay.
one. Proof of
okay.
continuous use.
Okay.
Boom. Okay. Item number 10, 6113BZ, 1385 Broadway, Manhattan.
All right, we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board waives its recommendation, and we don't yet have fire department. And this one expires in April of 19, and they applied in May of 19, within 30 days, or arguably within 30 days.
I have a note that says FDNY approved the interior allowance.
No, but a letter from FDNY.
Okay.
As opposed to
Statement from
the statements that, let's say, their submission. You know, we
Right.
used to, when we didn't have fire department having a special
Right.
attention to us, trying to figure out whether it was okay.
I just
Okay.
wanted to put that on.
Yeah, okay.
Have the hours changed since the last grant? Because they don't mention the hours, but they are listed in the past resolution.
Anybody else?
They need to change the note on their plan. They have a note saying local law 5887 compliance. Just update it to our standard note on our website.
Yeah. For the benefit of the applicant pool, local law
87.
of 87 is a local law from 1987. It's been a law since 1987 in the books, referred to by a section, right? So it's pretty strange to refer to a local law when it's been a law, right? Local laws are just that kind of temporary assignation while it's going through the legislative review process. Okay.
Appeals calendar, item number 11, 2017-59A, 3857 Ocean View Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, nothing was submitted on this unless it didn't load into my folder or something like that. So we're forced to adjourn it, but this
Yes.
has been in hearings for over a year, and my notes indicate very little has been happening, even though I don't believe the 11/20/18 hearing was adjourned, so that needs to be corrected. I just want to scroll down. There was no response to DEP's March 2013 letter and no submission, so this is getting dangerously close to questioning, like, what's going on. They don't seem to be pursuing this application very aggressively.
I just want to add that that letter was before the last hearing date.
Yes. No, the letter from DEP was before the last hearing date, and they still haven't responded to it, and they didn't submit anything. And my notes from June say, I didn't find anything submitted on this since February, and nothing in response to DEP. Our last hearing was in November.
Take a look at I think we did.
Yeah, so in other words, it seems like there's borderline of a failure to prosecute here, so I think maybe we send a letter, maybe that's the cleanest thing to do. Send a letter to them saying, seems as if,
I think we had also asked whether they needed a ZRD1 from DOB, and they also need to dry flood proof the entire space. Those were also in our comments.
okay, so a certified letter should go out, owner and applicant.
Okay, search. No, it's not. Okay. Item number 12, 2017-144A, 2530 44th Street, Queens. Should we put this in the front? I don't know what happened.
Because it's DOB, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
we
sorry,
should move
guys.
it to the
I'm
front.
sorry.
Yeah.
Should we
Okay.
pull that in the morning?
Yeah.
All right.
just Because DOB, we don't know how
Sorry.
long they'll be here. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they, the applicants, all this is buildings, the applicant asked for an adjournment.
Oh.
The property owner asked for an adjournment, 6-month adjournment.
Why?
They're working
No,
with...
no, okay, so let me just go, I understand what the issue is. So DOB submitted an updated status report, so I just want to go through what the issue is, indicating that plan review is in process, and there remains open objections that need to be resolved before a permit can be issued. On March 26, 2019, BSA granted conditional approval for the variance to allow conversion of the building from 2-family to 3-family. The conditions required that plans be submitted for full plan review by DOB as opposed to a self-certification, and substantial progress be made on the installation of code-required work by September 26, 2019, or BSA, it says actually in a resolution, shall revoke the approval. My understanding is that no work has actually been done, no physical work at the premises, but that plan exam review has been ongoing. So I'd like DOB's opinion as to whether they think the owner has been aggressively prosecuting the permit request, because permits, it's one thing to say you need to do all the work in 6 months, but if you don't have a permit, and there are good reasons for not having a permit, as in you keep submitting and they keep saying no, for good reasons on both sides, as opposed to just dawdling, delaying. So I really like DOB's opinion on whether this is being aggressively prosecuted, which was actually what we required. Other comments on that?
Yeah, I believe DOB is kind of like accusing the applicant of being like not up to speed on responding to them with regards to the objections. They said they just resolved 8 out of 16 of the objections they issued, so
But they also
I believe
did-
the applicant need to pay attention here too.
Yeah. So this is kind of the part of when you have objections, it's almost impossible to file a set of drawings and not get objections. I don't know if I've ever even heard of an application that didn't have any objections, right? And so the process for removing the objections is making appointments with a plans examiner and showing them how you're changing the project to respond to the objections. That can take a really long time. So to say that they've only removed whatever it was 6 of the 12 or something like that, doesn't mean that they're not aggressively pursuing, but they still haven't finished it, right? So that's what I mean. If DOB is unhappy with the progress, that's one thing. Then we can invoke our shall revoke the approval,
That's
right?
what I got from the language.
Right, but I'd rather DOB say it in so many words, because I'm not sure, it's very common that it takes you a really long time to remove objections when, let's say, they're tricky objections. I don't know if these are tricky objections, they may just be the architect, like, not doing anything, So,
I think DOB's letter does state that they did have 3 meetings with them since the
Yeah.
date. So I would like to know if the DOB believes that they have been pursuing that from the meetings.
And I think 2 of the objections are related to accessibility, so that does require
They needed the mayor's office waiver,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's all I was going to add, that just in a conversation with the owner's representative, that's been something that they're pursuing with the mayor's office, but until that is resolved, permits can't be pulled because it'll dictate design.
Right, right. But I thought that they, within the last little weeks, had something going on with the mayor's office, that they were either receiving the waiver or not receiving the waiver.
It just hasn't been, as of Friday, my understanding, it hasn't been finalized, but that's what they're pursuing.
Right. Because, the thing that's, we talked about this a lot with some of the build-it-back cases and a couple of our variance cases, where there's this thing called a LULA, which is a one-stop elevator, that's intended to deal with the reality that your first-level unit has to be accessible. So that could have been a way they dealt with it, installing a LULA. But apparently there's some other thing that as long as the interior of the space is accessible, you don't need to be able to get there from grade, whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, and also just, again, this is just a conversation, I don't know if it was reiterated in paper, but at the time that they filed with the OB, my understanding is that a plumber to do the installation of the sprinkler systems has been retained.
The sprinkler plan has been approved, right?
I can't speak to that.
Whatever,
Yeah.
let's have them
That's
talk
what
about it.
I heard.
Yeah.
I believe the UB mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Item number 13, 2017-318A, 155 Johnson Street, Staten Island.
Okay, so, sorry. In the June 25th, 2019 hearing, we actually, that was the third adjournment in a row, and so we sent them a dismissal warning letter, to which they did not respond. So, sorry?
Okay, I reached out to Todd Dale about this. They don't have authorization from the owner to withdraw, is my understanding.
They
of
don't need
last
to withdraw.
conversation.
We
Well,
get to
no, I
dismiss.
said, well, if there's nothing submitted, then we dismiss because we sent you out a warning letter.
Yes, okay. So this case was heard exactly a year ago last, and so it's a clear case of dismissal for failure to prosecute. It was only heard once, and that was that.
Okay. New cases, item number 14, 2017-99A, 3798 Railroad Avenue, Queens.
Okay, second. Okay, we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends approval based on June 6th hearing. This application has been sitting around for June 6th of this year hearing. This application has been sitting around for more than 2 years with a dismissal warning sent in. We have a June 30th, 2017 DEP comment letter and an April 18th, 2017 Fire Department conditional letter of no objection. I don't know whether Fire Department wants to revisit this because the letter is so old. The applicant provided a wandering collection of excerpts from access easements. We're not going to decipher these. If they are part of an argument to persuade us that access is safe, then a surveyor and a title company will need to put the history together on a signed and sealed survey. I don't find anything in this submission to explain what the status or width of Railroad Avenue is, and whether that is considered a point of access. Review Avenue's status and width are also not provided, nor is there information about the condition of the access route connecting the site to Review Avenue. We don't know anything. Width, is it paved, et cetera, et cetera. I know it's not, that's why I say.
The entirety of it, it's like you literally are driving along.
Yeah.
the edge of the railroad track.
It doesn't seem like
That's
it's a
what it
safe
is.
access.
No, that's Railroad Avenue. No, but I mean the connector from Review, it's also not paved.
And
Right.
there are vehicles going in and out at any given
Yeah.
point. It's,
Right.
I can't imagine it being an access or.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I wasn't even like to realize where the access road is when I drove. I drove actually all the way to the end where the stop sign is located, and I was looking for that access road, any gate or something like that.
Yeah,
I couldn't figure it out.
all right. So hence, fire department needs to revisit with a site plan, with a site visit also. We also, I want to say, BSA makes no representation about whether the existing structure meets code requirements. It apparently does comply with zoning regulations according to the zoning calculations on T-001. And DEP had a bunch of comments that were not responded to. Those are from 2017. So I don't actually understand this application because they had all this time to respond and update and, you know, get it into shape for 2019. Then they elected not to do that. There was a dismissal warning sent out in March of this year. And they responded in May of this year to that dismissal warning, but they didn't update anything.
We
So-
also asked them a couple of clarifications on the lot number. There was a merging of the lot. I didn't realize, Chase brought it to my attention, the merging of the lot. And the clarification of the DOB objection was for the correct lot number. I think that was it, right, Chase? Yeah. There's the agreements that's in there. There was some highlighted sections. I know, because I didn't merge the file, I'm sorry.
No.
But there was a
it's not-
highlighted section.
We don't do highlights.
No.
Right?
Council did that, BSA council did the highlighted sections.
My point is, BSA council should not be doing highlighted sections. There are lawyers who work on these.
No, I
jobs,
understand.
Right?
But at that
And
point, when
so-
the agreement was filed, I had questions and.
Okay,
Put it.
so here's the
Council
thing.
highlighted certain
They
sections.
seem to be relying on something to do with easements. I'm not going to figure out what it is they're
Okay.
relying on. I don't care about the history of easements that are three tax lots away. I mean, they actually just gave us a pile of easements, and as we see so often, we don't know what this means, says the applicant. You guys figure it out, because you're obviously more adept at figuring it out than we are. That's the message I get.
Okay.
Right? So, no, those are called, if you don't know how to do it as counsel for the applicant, then you hire a title company. That's what title companies do. And the title company and the surveyor work together, and then the survey shows what are the roads, what are the access agreements, all of that. That's how it's done. It's not our job. Okay?
Okay.
That's why they pay them. Okay.
But I did resubmit this to DEP.
Good, okay, thank you.
Zoning calendar, item number 15, 2018-25BZ, 109 Workman Avenue, Brooklyn. Are we reopening?
Oh, no.
No, okay.
So, let me just get to this. So I listened to the very long hearing from last time, which was in, August 13th. Extremely long hearing, went on for an hour and a half. We closed the hearing because the applicant refused to adjust the design of the building to show the required 14 spaces on site or off-site, you know, in a lot that meets the requirements of the zoning resolution. The 14 spaces is the maximum number that we have the authority to waive. I frankly don't understand the applicant's response here. In that event, in the event that the applicant pursues this way, there are no drawings that comply with our approval for us to stamp as approved. The next question that was presented at that hearing was whether it is proper for DOB to waive the 14 spaces that result as a result of our special permit reduction. In other words, to allow what we're calling the double dip. The way I read the zoning resolution, it does not allow you to jump from Article 7 following a BSA action back into Article 4 to try it again. Section 44-23 states that the, quote, "parking requirements set forth in 44-21 shall not apply," unquote. The BSA determines what the parking requirements are by virtue of Section 73-44, not 44-21. By way of comparison, the House of Worship City Planning certification sits firmly within Article 4 and does not require moving into Article 7. Perhaps I would say this question should be the subject of an interpretive appeal. BSA is, after all, tasked with determining what the text means, absent action by the legislature. In the meantime, while we were waiting from August, City Planning gave us some useful information to reinforce my position. As it turns out, both the 4423 waiver and the 73-44 special permit have existed since 1961, although Section 7344 was made to apply to ambulatory care facilities only in 2004. At the time of the proposal for the 1961 zoning resolution, apparently, city planning contemplated that offices should be treated as parking category C rather than B1, which would have allowed in category C for 1 space per 600 square feet. This proposal, though, was rejected by the Board of Estimate, and the special permit was thus created to allow, but only subject to BSA's discretionary public review and deep scrutiny, a reduction in parking up to a maximum of 50% of what parking category B1 allows. That underscores for me that the legislature never intended the 4423 waiver provision to apply to projects that had already benefited from 7344 special permit parking reductions. So for me, the short of it is that unless the applicant amends the drawings to show the 14 spaces on site or somewhere off-site in compliance with the zoning resolution as to distance and ownership, we have nothing before us to grant, and the application should be denied. Other comments? Nothing?
Nothing?
Yeah, I just want to provide.
Commissioner Ollie Brent, we'll go in order, unless you don't have
I
a
just want to
comment.
say that I am in agreement with you, and being that we can only waive 14 spaces, that's all the BSA has the power to do, then the plans have to reflect the balance of the spaces.
First of all, I want to mention that I agree with the chair and Commissioner Brown regarding the authorization of the board just to waive 50% of the required parking size. This is the first point I want to highlight. The second point is I did listen, I wasn't here the last hearing, I did listen to the entire hearing 2 times. And I did read the parking study, the one that was presented in July and prepared in July and the one before. And I would like to mention that the applicant got 2 shots on the parking study. The first one indicated that they need 36 spots or spaces, and if this is correct, this application should be denied. The second one went down from 36 to 5, and I believe the reason for that was because of the model split factor was taken down from about 22% to 3 to 4%. They actually measured, in their report, they said they measured or they surveyed between 3 and 22%, and they took an average to work on like 10% average. So that took the 36 spaces required previously in April, I believe, to just 5 in July. I did listen to Stonefield engineer argument explaining why, about the variability of the split mode factor from 3 to 4% on 3 days and on another day, which was actually the initial day of surveying, about 22%. And I listened that, I understand that he's attributing this to some sort of using a camera at the entrance door, and he's believing that some of the delivery trucks were counted like more than one time. I would say this would affect the trip generation, the number of total trips, but it wouldn't impact the split mode factor, the modal split factor, Because through the camera, yes, you can count, instead of the real number is 5 trips, you could count 10. But you cannot confuse the extra 5 as a car or as a truck or as an Uber. It's not possible through the camera that you can determine the modal spread factor. Yes, the trip generation, I understand this, but for the modal spread, it should be some sort of explanation in the study that explains why it did drop from 22% to 3 or 4%. I do field work in the world of geotechnical and structural, and I usually believe that the best way to present a technical report to somebody is to go to the field or to the lab and measure it. Nobody can argue then with you why this number is high, this number is odd, because you simply can respond, I did measure it in the field, if you don't believe it, go measure it. I believe this is the same logic used here. We did measure it. If you don't like it, we can use the 3 and 4%. We've been generous, and we used the average of 22, 3, 3, 4. I am not buying the argument again about this huge variability between 3 and 22. Therefore, I believe the second shot of the study, which concluded only 5 spots required, is not convincing to me. So I'm still convinced that they need 36 spaces per the first study. And if this is the case, I'm against the application. And regarding the double dip issue, I believe I did read the section regarding the DOB waiving parking if it's less than a specific number for a certain district. I believe that DOB can do that if this number is calculated based on the zoning resolution. But if it's coming from the BSA, I don't believe it's possible, it's feasible to waive that reduced number. You can reduce the already reduced number. You cannot total waive the parking. And I agree with the chair. I did listen to the hearing at the end. The chair mentioned that we need to specify a condition. If we're gonna grant this, we need to put a condition in our resolution saying that the minimum number of parking spots to be provided on site is X. And if we mention that, I don't think any other agency has the authority to reduce this without notifying us.
Thank you.
I agree with everything I heard. For me, it was a rather simple decision in that we weren't provided with plans that we can approve pursuant to 7344. And whether or not the issue of DOB for the waiver isn't necessarily relevant in this particular proceeding because we don't have anything we can approve.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Continued hearing items. Item number 16, 2016-1215 BZ, 142 West 29th Street, Manhattan.
Okay. They requested an adjournment. Sorry, I was waiting for my computer to recycle.
That's okay. No, we're not done. Okay. Item number 17, 2017-34 BZ, 311 Adams Avenue, Staten Island.
They also requested an adjournment, and this is the third and last adjournment. A certified dismissal warning letter should go out to owner and applicant. And we last heard this in January, and at the time, the applicant stated that the owner would engage a new architect. We are informed that the new architect has completed flood compliance and is nearly ready to submit. This application was initially filed in February 2017, received a dismissal warning in 2018, and has been lingering on the calendar for almost a year. So really last chance, otherwise it gets either dismissed or we vote to not to approve.
Item number 18, 2017-244BZ, 2208 Bowler Avenue, the Bronx.
So this is a pretty confusing application. I can't even count the number of hearings, it would kind of take too long. I know in the middle somewhere, they changed the architect and changed the design and so on, so you give them kind of arguably a break on it. But we've been at hearing since September of 2017, so exactly 2 years in hearings, right? They requested another adjournment to resolve DEP noise comments. I don't understand what's taking so long. I really would like the applicant's environmental consultant to attend to explain the issues, because really it just keeps dragging and dragging and dragging, and I don't see why. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this before, that it goes on for so long about what I believe is a very small issue, which has to do with the use of the roof. And it's true, the use of the roof in an area where there's residents, but, you put up sound attenuation. It's like, we have the authority to waive the height on the sound attenuation if that's one of the concerns. So you don't understand what's going on. So their consultant should come.
Okay. Item number 19, 2018-136BZ, 25177 Jericho Turnpike, Queens. Are we calling these separate, or?
That one
might
not be seeking parking waiver.
No, they did not withdraw it.
No.
No, they didn't withdraw. And I'm sorry, on the last one, sorry, can we just say that one last? I left out
I'm
one
sorry,
comment.
we're going back to number 18.
Yeah,
2017-24040BZ, 2208 Bowler Avenue, the Bronx.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry.
So the applicant submitted a response to DEP's comments on October 3rd. And their response, and DEP commented, they submitted the response on September 17th. On October 3rd, DEP commented that their response was confusing. And that they suggested that the applicant speak directly with DEP, with BSA on a conference call. All that should definitely take place, but perhaps if we had the consultant speak to us at the hearing, we could understand and articulate what the issue is, because maybe either the applicant's consultant is going down sort of the proverbial garden path unnecessarily, and we could clear this up at the hearing, and then DEP would have clearer information and the applicant clearer instructions.
And Madam
Yeah.
Chair, we tried to facilitate a conference call between the representative and DEP. Unfortunately, the project manager from DEP who is handling the matter is out until, I believe, early November, which the applicant's representative has agreed to meet. We will continue to pursue that meeting.
Okay.
Based on the last hearing we had, comments from July 16, it seems the applicant had decided to get rid of the rooftop playground because that was one of the comments.
Maybe, yeah.
And you had specifically, Madam Chair, asked them to verify that if they can do it, since UPK would need an outdoor play area.
Yes.
So
I don't know.
If they did remove it.
Yeah, it's not clear that they removed it because all of DEP's comments were related to that, right?
Right.
It says, please note that the qualitative playground noise impact analysis is not sufficient, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't sound like they clearly removed it, and maybe because they can't, because you need an outdoor area for UPK, or you need I just don't really remember what the rules are for UPK, whether they can get away with only having an indoor play area and take them to a park, for example. I don't know what the rules are.
Okay, now move on, or?
Yes, sorry.
So item number 19, 2018-136BZ, 25177 Jericho Turnpike, Queens.
Okay, so nothing new was actually submitted on this particular application folder, but there's a lot of relevant information that you see in the other folders. So, but I actually have in my notes that they were going to withdraw the parking reduction request, and they didn't do that, so it's still before us. So I'd like to know whether the required 144 parking spaces are actually shown on the drawings. The parking chart has a tabulation conflict showing either 144 or 149 spaces are provided, so which is it? They don't actually do what you usually see on parking layouts, the number of spaces at each spot. The 5 spaces at grade, which are really supposed to be for the daycare, are described as being for retail, but in fact, they will be reserved for daycare 10-minute parking, so there's a conflict there. And they shouldn't count, obviously, towards the total required. The parking study assumes that, the actual parking consultant's parking study. When I do the math based on the floor area for each use shown in the parking study, and 1 space per 300 square feet, I actually get 147 required spaces, not 144. So the parking study is the only one where the total areas are added, as opposed to in the plans, it's just, you know, a little space for this, little space for this, little space for this. It's supposed to be the gross floor area. And I don't know when they're adding them up on the plans, they're just taking kind of the interior spaces. So I don't know if that's gross. So it seems that the parking study is probably more accurate. Spaces also need to be numbered, as I said, so we can verify total parking count. And then in terms of the plan of the parking, what if a daycare patron wants to park in the cellar? You know, let's say it's a person who wants to discuss with the daycare whether they're going to enroll their kid in this daycare program, they're obviously going to park. Or maybe it's the day where parents, it's like that mommy and me thing where the parent gets to go and be with the kid on the first day of daycare. They have to park. So what if they want to park in the cellar? How do they get from the cellar to the daycare without walking up the ramp if the elevator is blocked, which it is by a piece of equipment? The same question holds for the gym. The gym is blocked by the gym elevator is blocked by equipment. In addition, patrons have to walk past stackers and active car parking to get to the gym elevator. How is that made safe? There's no kind of walking lane walking way, because the way is very narrow, so I don't actually see a place where pedestrians can walk safely to the gym elevator. I also don't understand how the Gotham lifts are accessed. They are represented on the drawings as if on 2 levels, but they're actually multi-tiered systems that sit on a deeper cellar floor. How many tiers are there? It's really not clear. It seems as if the person who drew these parking plans didn't really understand how these lifts work, because I looked it up and they don't look like that picture. On the Gotham, they're described as Gotham lifts, but I'm not really sure that they're using Gotham lifts. On the Gotham lift website, I only see 2 tiers available, but the drawings indicate there are more. Gotham lifts are actually puzzle lifts, so they move the car around vertically and horizontally. They're not high stackers, as far as I can tell. And obviously, fire department will want to know about this. So those are my comments just about the parking question. Any comments here?
I didn't look into the details of it since they were planning to withdraw, and then it would be an as of right, so.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
neither. I expected they were withdrawing,
Yeah.
especially since they didn't send anything else in.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing, they didn't withdraw, so it's still before us. And so, but the other thing about it is, for me, I looked at it because we have also a request for a PCE and a request for daycare, and so safe access to both of those in the parking garage is needed, and so that's part of the question. Okay.
Say it on the next one.
Okay.
Item number, I'm sorry, may I go to the next one?
Yeah.
Item number 20, 2018-137BZ, 25177 Turnpike, Queens. This is the daycare.
Yes. Okay, here we go. The 73-19 threshold questions were addressed, I guess, by someone else's ZRD one, so I'm not sure how council feels about this. So it's a ZRD one for the subsequent application that determined daycare for children 5 to 12 years old is somehow accessory to the use group 3, quote, school, or, hashtag school, which I have to presume is meant to be the main portion of the daycare center for children younger than 5, so meeting the definition of school. And a much more detailed analysis of comparable potential as-of-right sites located in the catchment area was provided. I don't know if Commissioner Otley Brown was okay.
I really don't understand. I don't think I'm very clear in my instructions. It seems like you go to a realtor and you say, for instance, I'm looking for a house. And the realtor says, okay, where are you looking? And you say, I'm looking in the Parkchester area. And they show you what they have available in Parkchester. And you go, oh no, this house is too small. Oh no, this house is out of my income ability. It's too expensive. Oh no, this house requires too much rehab. And you dwindle it down. What they still keep giving us is a list of what they think are sites that aren't even available. The Catholic school has no availability. I don't even know why you would bring somebody to the Catholic school site if you were a realtor. They didn't list anything. It's
Right.
a Catholic school. So I'm not quite sure how they're interpreting site search, but that's not what a site search has been traditionally interpreted as. It's that you're looking at available sites and there's nothing that is suitable. And what we used to receive were legitimate. The broker showed us these 10 sites that were available. This one, they're asking for too much money per square foot. This one, it's not going to be ready in time for September 2019 or 2020 when we want to open. This one can't accommodate 150 children. It can only accommodate 100 children. This one has classrooms on the 4th floor. We can't have preschool children on the 4th floor. We're not getting that. I don't understand why. So I'm thinking maybe I'm not making myself clear.
Right. And actually, your exercise is easier than the one they did.
It is.
You go to the broker and you say, find me this many square feet in this catchment area. Here's the map. Anything in here will work.
Right. I'm looking
Right.
to buy. And usually
Right.
the broker has some stuff. It may not be
Right.
stuff you find appropriate, but most brokers will have something.
Right.
We spent a great deal of time on that at the last hearing.
Yes. Yeah, what they did was they made prettier the argument that they made before. They went through it in detail and they show pictures and everything like that, but it is very surprising when you see that the church isn't selling therefore, or the church doesn't want to add a building on their site, which isn't surprising.
I think they went through the exercise, like, this is a residential neighborhood, this is my catchment area, and I'm trying to find any site that I can build upon, or I can lease. And so they've literally scoured through a home to an empty parking lot to see if it's a site is feasible, and then they kind of did the other way.
Right.
Of saying, well, this home is too small, and this is a parking lot for the church, and they're going to use it, so I cannot use it.
But the key
argument
here
was-
is availability.
Yes.
None of those are available sites. They're not available for anything. Nobody put them up for sale, nobody listed them. None of them are interested in developing anything. A church that has a daycare already is not going to list with a broker.
And if the argument is there's nothing available, then make that argument.
Right, I think they're trying to say that, but they're not,
It's easy. You go to a broker, you go to several brokers, it can't be one
Right.
broker. You go to 5 brokers who are known for handling sites of substance as opposed to private houses. Everybody knows which ones they are, right? And you say to them, give me a printout of everything in my catchment area that is available for lease or sale that has a minimum floor area or usable space of X. That's it. And obviously, the criteria in this particular case wasn't that strict, because the daycare is broken on 2 floors, and it uses the roof, a setback roof, right? So it didn't need to be new construction. It could be something where you take an elevator from the ground floor to the upper floor. You don't need to have that much ground floor space. I mean, it's actually quite an adjustable typology, sort of the way they've done it, as opposed to some of the schools we see where they have to have 4 contiguous floors, or there's no way, and it needs to be this huge floor plate. That's not the case here at all. And in fact, like, sort of proof of it is that the daycare, it's not only is it split on floors, but it's shared adjacent to a medical office and all of this sort of stuff. So they weren't even picky about who the adjacencies are, right?
It's just like they took a shortcut.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you allow shortcuts, then before you know it, the entire process is going to be completely down the drain.
I just want to point out one thing. I think this neighborhood is right at the edge of Queens and Nassau County, so they're looking for a site that's in Queens area. And the other part is that it's primarily residential, all small homes. The only area where such a use could be located would be along the commercial strips. And these are mostly one-story buildings that are with very small footprints, and not that many exist there. So I'm just kind of, I think there's a ground for their,
No, we're
Is
talking.
there 100% occupancy in the commercial area there that where it's as of right? If the answer is no, then they can do it the way it's supposed to be done. And then they whittle the sites down. Unless there is 100% occupancy and there's absolutely no availability, nobody, no commercial space, no retail space, no nothing is up for, the broker is out of business, the brokers have closed their doors because there's nothing commercial. That's the only way to do it this way. But if their broker's doing business and they're somehow offering sites up for lease or for sale, then you need to go to the broker and you say, hey, what have you got available? And even if all of them are only 5,000 square feet, then you list them. They are all, this is what's available. And they're all, unfortunately, only 5,000 square feet of space, but we did the site search.
Right, right. And, you know, we do have a standard that people have to follow. Otherwise, we can't know that the search was actually done, because the public policy behind these permits is you're not supposed to be whittling down commercial districts, right? Manufacturing districts with a use that's really not ideal in a manufacturing district, right? Look at the issues we're confronting here. We're confronting, or a C8 district, we're confronting this confluence of heavy commercial uses against baby carriages, right? Obviously, this is more appropriately located in a low-level commercial overlay district or a residential district that permits schools as of right.
Right,
Right?
and this is supposed to be a location of last resort.
Yes, so they need to show that they've actually done the search, that's correct. Okay, so, and to continue my comments, so I agree with that. The entry condition to the daycare has been improved somewhat by creating a 5-foot wide sidewalk that goes from the street directly to the daycare. There is now also a stop sign and stop gate that forces those coming to park in the 144-space garage to wait until pedestrians cross from the 5-space daycare drop-off area to the daycare entrance. I still have to admit that I don't understand how this will work. The distance behind the drop gate is only about 70 feet, which is enough for a 3-car backup. So all the rest of the cars will sit on the sidewalk and on Little Neck Parkway while they wait for the drop gates to lift. This is also, not to mention, you know, it's children walking holding on to, say, a baby carriage or a parent's hand. So they're not necessarily, or a guardian's hand, they're not necessarily moving that fast across those crosswalks, right?
That's something, I just want to, that's piggyback, that's something that the community board was mentioned in their statement to us.
Yeah, pull the mic closer to you when you speak. So, so this is So that's also true for the parents who drop off the children. There's only 5 drop-off spaces, and presumably everyone's coming at the same time and hysterical about getting to work, right? So you have 5 drop-off spaces where it's predicted that it takes 5-10 minutes to bring your kid across and drop off and so on and get back in the car. So then the rest of those parents back up onto Little Neck. And I note that the parking accumulation study indicates peak accumulation at 8 a.m. and a reduction after 4 p.m., which is about when most people will drop off and pick up their children from daycare. This confluence was discussed numerically but not practically in the parking study. The trip generation analysis actually shows that 73 cars will be coming in during the peak AM hours and 36 going out at the same time period. I'd like to understand how the drop gates will handle all of that traffic, and that was not discussed at all. So that's one of the things about number crunching. Numbers aren't the same as the reality of how people use a space. There are some lines on the maneuverability drawing that aren't explained. I'm trying to understand, is there a curb or is it a double line between the in and out routes? I think it's a double line as described in one of the statements, but the drawings aren't labeled. Is there a fence and a curb separating the drop-off parking area from the driveway? Are the dots around the hatch pavement bollards? Yes, they're bollards, not labeled on the drawings. The traffic circulation report refers to a bollard on Little Neck Parkway. That's not shown on the plan. And apparently DOT is okay with it, but we don't know where it is that they're okay with. An interior security system for corridors and stairs was provided. Separation of children from unrelated adults is very dependent on that system working properly, since daycare floors are shared with commercial uses. We don't typically see this at all in these applications. Usually floors are dedicated to a single user, which I still believe is the right thing to do here as well, especially because the medical office on that floor is very small. And could easily be subsumed by the daycare center if it's successful. I also note that the gym, which is located on the 2nd floor, has all of its showers and toilets located directly above the daycare center. So I'd ask the PCE applicant later to explain how it will protect the space below from leaks. And I have to say that among the many different things that I did when I had my own business as an architect was gyms. And the gyms are plagued by leaky showers. In fact, oftentimes the showers are shut down because the gym just can't figure out how to prevent the leaks. Happily, there's no sauna here or steam room. DOT submitted an extensive comment letter on October 3rd, to which applicant must respond. I note that their comments do not reflect the most recent set of drawings and related submissions that were submitted to us on October 3rd, so this is one of those passing in the mail. At the last hearing, fire department expressed concerns about multiple fire exits, some egressing to the rear and some to the street, and also had concerns about access to the cellar. The plans have been revised, and I'd like to know whether fire department is satisfied with the modifications. We have extensive DEP comments as of August 27th on hazmat, to which applicant responded on September 27th. I would like to verify with DEP that they have looked at the play roof with respect to noise and air quality and are aware that this is a daycare center with respect to that hazmat and noise question because,
Yeah, I did reach out to them and they said that the rooftop play area was looked at for the noise. It was also mentioned in one of their March letters.
Okay.
And then I asked about the air quality and they're gonna get that.
Okay.
Or I asked them to.
And they were aware as to hazmat and noise and the play roof for the daycare, right?
Right.
As opposed to being a source of, it's a source of noise as opposed to receptor, but also, or in addition to being a receptor, right?
Right.
Okay. Other, let me see, just one last little thing. Right. Yeah, okay, any other comments? No.
In terms of DOT, they had reached out to me about the EAS. Because the parking reduction is being removed, they thought some of the charts were confusing now, looking at all the uses, because that's how we usually start, looking at all the uses. And they really want to focus in on the daycare and the traffic that's going to come from the daycare in terms of safety for the intersections and the detailed analysis. So the consultant's waiting for the go-ahead to go forward with what we think is the next step in that part of the analysis, to just look at the daycare. So I'm hoping to get comments today.
To just look at the daycare, but with an
For the
active
trips.
parking garage of 144 spaces. So they're arguing that they
Right.
have very few trips. I don't know how DOT considers that. There are 144 spaces that will be used by daycare people also. So, right?
Yeah.
Even if
We'll
that's
send
not
them the
technically.
latest plans too.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Okay.
Item number 21, 2018-145BZ, 25173 Jericho Turnpike, Queens. This is the PCE.
The plans were revised to accord with the two cases above. That was our problem before, that the plans didn't match. Acoustical information was provided for floors and hung ceilings, but I note that there are many treadmills and stationary bikes that are the source of vibration, with no plans to put rubber flooring under them. The plans, in fact, aren't clear about what is proposed in the stippled area. There's no what's designated as a B detail versus the hatched area. What is the plan to prevent the vibration from communicating to adjoining walls and columns? And how will the daycare center be protected from leaking showers, was my question from earlier. Anybody else on this? Okay.
Item number 22, 2019-15BZ, 7940 Cooper Avenue, Queens.
We have a new letter from Community Board 5 dated October 1st.
Right.
Which I'm just going to read, sorry. Because I thought they made some really valid points. They said, "We are in receipt of a set of documents in reference to the above property and have the following concerns. The drawings included in the package indicate 3 adjacent entry and exit driveways, 2 for the storage and warehouse facility, and 1 for the proposed 2-story structure referenced above. We believe the exiting traffic without a traffic control signal at each one will create hazardous conditions. Lacking such traffic control signal, we would recommend signage for each of the driveway exits be provided stating right turn only. A hazard would still exist by westbound Cooper Avenue traffic attempting to make left turns into each of these driveway entrances and needs to be addressed." So I think their points are very valid, and I think DOT should be consulted since they're involved in this.
We sent this letter to DOT and along with the review, which is still underway.
Okay,
of the
great.
last submission,
Okay,
and the latest.
great. Okay. A revised site plan was provided, but it's difficult to understand as the hatching and stippling keys are not provided. According to the cover letter, the driveway at the rear accessed by a curb cut at Cooper and 80th Street has been eliminated. However, neither the site plan nor the first floor plan clearly shows that. In fact, the first floor plan shows it's still there. And the site plan puts dots on it, but that doesn't mean it's not still an active driveway. The fire department also should review the revised roof access plan and the plans in general. The purpose of they provided a refrigerated trash area, sort of, but the purpose of the refrigerated trash storage area is to keep the trash inside the property before it is picked up by haulers. So I don't understand the idea of a refrigerated trash area on the second floor in the pantry. when it has to be dragged down to the first floor by cleaning crew the night before pickup. It's this, I think they misunderstand the purpose of a refrigerated trash room, and they also don't have a trash room. They just, it doesn't exist. So it needs to be provided. They also don't provide stroller storage. So where do strollers go? Because they argue that most people are going to walk to this center, right? So where are strollers? We need an update on the DEP's air quality determination to be sure they are aware of the playground on the roof. We don't have hazmat sign off yet. DEP's September 24th email recommends preparation of a Phase 2 work plan and HASP. DEP is okay with respect to noise from the playground on the roof. That's my notes. DOT requested additional information on September 9th. I know the HASP and Phase 2 work plan were submitted, and the EAS revised on September 27th, so there hasn't been time for DEP to review. And the applicant submitted a tech memo in response to DOT comments, also on September 27th, I assume, without time for DOT to review.
I have additional comments. I don't know if FDNY has had a chance to review the roof plan. Again, I agree with you on the refrigerator. I don't even think it's big enough to handle the trash that is going to be generated, since it's going to be a small area of a pantry. Regarding the area now that's been, the driveways has been converted into a landscaping. If they're proposing to do so, then they need to provide a detail of the landscaping plan for that area. The statement also talks about an after-school program where adults will be accompanying the children. We need an operational detail which was not provided.
Sorry, could you say the last point again? After landscaping?
After-school program.
Okay.
Yeah, where adults would be accompanied, so we just need to know how that is going to happen operationally to ensure there's separation.
Sorry, separation between what and what?
Adults and other children, infants, and the security and access. Where will they be dropped off, pick up? Those are, and that also goes to the community board's concern.
Any other comments? No?
Item number 20, may I move on? Item number 23, 290 Mulberry Street, Brooklyn. Mulberry Street, Manhattan, sorry.
Yeah.
PCE.
Is there one? I'd just like to know whether fire department is satisfied with the revised notes on the plans, assuming that they were revised because they weren't bubbled, so I don't really know whether they were revised. Fire department had commented that, in their letter of no objection, that note number 3 on BSA 2 and BSA 3 be removed. There's still a note number 3, but I'm not sure whether the offending statement was removed.
No signage is being proposed, I just want to confirm that.
Okay.
Move on? New cases. Item number 1, 2018-59BZ, 3030 Northern Boulevard, Queens, PCE.
This is the legalization. We have proof of service of initial application to officials, but I don't find proof of notice of hearing.
Okay.
Community board recommends conditional approval, and we obviously need proof of hearing, otherwise there's no hearing tomorrow. The conditional approval from the community board, which is echoed by the borough president, is provision on-site of parking spaces that are designated for use by gym clients, even though parking is not required by zoning Review the fire exit plan for a more direct route outside. The plan indicates egress through the aerobic room into a building corridor. You're never allowed to egress to a room. Ensure access to the lift is unobstructed. The plan indicates there's a step. That's interesting. And then the rest is about community access for gym activities, which is in our domain. So I'd like to know when this opened. The 1991 CO describes this as a 5-story plus basement factory, 68 feet high, but the drawings indicate the building is 7 stories. The BIS job data indicates the building is to be enlarged and converted to offices with 150 space accessory parking, to the point of the community board. These 2 stories were obviously constructed, but the work has not been signed off. I'd like to know what the current status is. It's a this is a legalization, so obviously all that work, I hope all the work was done, because otherwise you're occupying a building that's under construction, so then you have even more egress concerns potentially, right, or fire concerns. We have DOI, we don't have fire department, and the acoustical isolation is described on a separate letter prepared by the architect. It describes the flooring, but not the ceiling or the demising wall treatments. Since the PCE is on the first floor of an office retail building, how are adjacent and above uses protected from noise and vibration in any way? That should have been shown on the drawings. Others?
This building immediately abuts an above-grade elevated train track, so vehicular access to the site is a little complicated, and there aren't any on-street parking because of the elevated track and others. This is this is one of those old manufacturing buildings that's been converted, and Sunnyside Yards is up on the other side. I think the building is somewhat occupied. There are some vacant floors that are being renovated for new office spaces. I think it was used by MTA as a staging area for a lot of the East Side access work, and now it's vacant. But I think the community board's concern with regards to the access and the parking is an issue, because there isn't enough parking space.
But there's 150-something spaces according to the Schedule A for the renovation, right? Yeah, 150.
It's for the entire building, right?
Sure, that's always.
So then the PCE will have a.
Now, so the community board says we want them dedicated to the PCE. So I don't know how the 150 spaces was calculated. I don't know what the, I don't know how they came to that conclusion, if that's required versus desired parking. It's a conversion, so I don't know what the rule, how the rule plays into it in terms of, Carl?
It's the enlargement.
The enlargement, right, yeah. So the enlargement, I don't know if it generated 150 spaces. That's the thing. So we don't have any calculations if the enlargement was responsible for that, 2 floors, or whether they have a site and they're putting a lot of spaces on it, right? So but anyway, they should explain how they're going to be dealing with the parking for the PCE, which obviously is a heavy parking generator. And typically it generates parking earlier than office hours and later than office hours. You know, people go to the gym from 5 to like 7, and then they come again after work. So I don't think there'd be a conflict.
But it could, it's a thought, I mean, it could be that the PCE is occupying a space that's part of the non-compliant portion itself, not triggering a parking.
No, certainly, that's what I'm thinking. It doesn't trigger parking, and the statement of facts says, without explaining very well, that it doesn't trigger parking, but the community board comment is you should have parking even if it's not required, and that's understood. You know, the reasoning behind it is understood. Gyms are heavy parking creators when you're not right adjacent to public transit, right?
This one is. This one is, and this area is changing rapidly. A lot of the old commercial buildings are being converted, or vacant sites are becoming residential areas. So there is a whole new, this is basically the Queens Plaza area, the Long Island City area, where a lot of new residential buildings are coming up. And so it's right next to the EFGR, you name it, the alphabet soup of train lines are coming there. So I don't think access, that's an issue. And I think given the new residential population that's coming in, there would be good amount of people who will be walking to the site. Though a lot of these new buildings are also providing their own amenities, so to be seen. I did have a questions regarding the hour of operation. The applicant has states, in the plan, it says Monday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., Friday, 1 a.m. to 11 p.m., Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the statement of fact, hour of operation is different, specifically for Monday through, it says Monday through Friday, 4 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Sunday, 8 to 6. So the documents are not consistent. So they need to indicate that.
And they should update their statement to reflect that it's a legalization now.
Yes. And when opened. Okay. Okay.
Item number 2, 2018-66BZ, 118 West 72nd Street, Manhattan. This is a PCE.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application to officials and proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Notice was apparently posted in the lobby of the building. They say that that's the lobby. It's obviously sort of a funny building, so it's hard to tell where a lobby is, but I believe it, typical of buildings of that type. Community board recommends approval. This is a legalization. I'd like to know when it opened. We have DOI, we have fire department letter of no objection. We have Landmarks Commission approved plans from 1998 for the same area, so it's actually always been used as some kind of a gym. Like to know what the total what the total area of the PCE is. I'd like to understand how ADA access from the sidewalk is handled. As the drawings indicate, there's one step up. We often have like a little bell that says, please ring. There is a PCE with weightlifting. This is a PCE with weightlifting in a residential building, so they have to provide acoustical details. Photos show sound absorption panels applied to kind of haphazard areas of the ceiling and walls, but not throughout. Normally, that would be used to deaden sound in the space itself. Not to prevent its communication of sound above. The product specs themselves describe the material as, quote, echo eliminator, so that's about the space itself, not the communication. And also, what is the music situation? It's private training, but I don't know, often private training places have loud music, because...
To add to your questions with regards to the total breakdown of the total floor area, there is a small area of the PC that's in the cellar, and it's not clear from the documents what's the breakdown of the floor area between the ground floor and the cellar is, so that should be provided in addition to the total. And since there is a space in the cellar, I just want to know if and I think it's shown as a stretching area or so.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that similar space is available on the ground floor since the cellar is not accessible, ADA accessible.
Could also ask, is it a stretching area or is it small classes? Because it could also be, it's possible to get a trainer for 3 people at a time kind of thing. So in which case then it's not an equivalent space, right? Anybody else?
Yeah, we just want to know if, because there is a residential on the property, we want to know if there's any complaints from residents around.
Right. So they notified, as we require, they posted in the lobby of the residential building. We didn't so far receive any comments from neighbors. We'll see tomorrow, but we haven't received anything.
Okay. Item number 3, 2018-181BZ, 150 East 55th Street, Manhattan. This is a PCE. It's a PCE date.
So I don't find proof of service of initial application to officials other than to the community board. So this was kind of odd. They showed that they let the community board know, but nobody else.
All right, let me find it.
Yeah, we do have a proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community board recommends conditional approval to limit the term to 5 years, which is their standard. We do have DOI. Massage licenses were provided, but several have expired. So they need to be updated. We still need fire department's comment. And the CO indicates there is another PCE on the 6th floor. Just for our, information, I don't know if it's relevant. Anybody else on this one?
Yeah, the statement of facts actually indicate a note, mentioned that there is a note regarding noise abatement, but the plans were revised thereafter, and the new plans appear to not have the same set of notes that were in the previous plans. And I did look at the older set and the newer set, and in the older set, this note says noise abatement measures shall be provided within the PCE space to ensure that the sound level in other portions of the building, etc. So I believe it should say that this note should be added, first of all, should be added to the new set of plans, and it should be modified to say to ensure at all times that the sound level in all other portions of the building.
To ensure at all, say the whole sentence?
Sure. Noise abatement measures shall be provided within the PCE space to ensure at all times this is the addition we're looking for, that the sound level in all, they have to add the word all, other portions of the building, and the rest of the statement is okay.
Which is, because
But
finish
they
the
have- they have-
statement.
yes, but-
Finish the statement so we can hear the whole sentence.
Sure. Noise abatement measures shall be provided within the PCE space to ensure at all times that the sound level in all other portions of the building does not exceed the maximum noise level of 45 dBA.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
And like I said, this statement is shown on the old set, but it's not on the new
Carried
set, so they need to move it over.
Okay, good. Thanks. Anybody else? No?
And they just need to add ADA compliance notes to their notes on the plans.
That do not refer to local law 58, but.
They don't have any.
No, but in other words, it has to be our current notes,
Standard notes.
not the local law 58 notes.
Correct.
Item number 4, 2019-41BZ, 1 West Street, Manhattan.
Okay. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. I believe the DOB objection was issued more than 30 days before the submission date. The denial date is January 31, 19, and the denial, and the submission is March 6, 19. So they missed the 30 days. Community board recommends conditional approval. Yeah, right? So We have DOI, we have fire department, letter of no objection. Acoustical details are shown for the cardio area, but are not keyed to the plans, nor is the cardio area labeled on the plans. What about other noise sources from sound and vibration? How are those handled? And how is music handled? This is an individual landmark, so we should have a copy of the certificate of no effect or certificate of appropriateness. And they need to revise the plan notes to comply with BSA standards for ADA and anything else. I don't know if all the standard notes are on there.
Unless I missed it, I couldn't find the hours of operation.
Let's see. Yeah, you're right.
I have 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days.
Operational.
Excuse me?
Oh, I missed it. Thank you.
Okay.
Item number 5, 2019-62BZ, 435 Hudson Street, Manhattan.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application to officials and proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. And I again believe DOB objection was issued more than 30 days before the submission date. It was a February 21, 19 denial versus a March 25th, 19 submit.
Is this, wait, I'm going to check those dates, because if it's a Saturday or a Sunday, we take it. Then I'll just double check that. Back to the-
So is it business days or is it calendar days? The 30 days is calendar days.
It's calendar days, but if it falls on the weekend,
We accept it,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I
That's why you
didn't check
throw me
that.
off like with the March.
Yeah, so maybe that was it, but that's a pretty long weekend, let's just say, the 21 to the 25th. Granted, it's February. So,
28 days in February.
oh, no, yeah. So I also believe the zoning district designation is only M15, not MX6. The 5-foot overlap into the MX6 is inapplicable pursuant to 7711. Community board recommends approval, need DOI and
have.
fire department. Oh, we have
We have DOI, I just got it today.
Oh, okay. Okay. Plans are difficult to read as there are many extraneous hatchings and symbols. And it's not clear what type of equipment is to be used in the exercise area, which gives us an idea about noise and vibration. Provide information about noise abatement on the drawings. Anybody else?
Signage,
What about?
don't have the information.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, Vice Chair?
Signage.
Signage.
Okay.
Regarding the noise, I'm not sure if they are proposing any, like, noise mitigation. I didn't see in the statement of facts, like, any description for whatever they intend to provide, so I'm not sure if they, I believe some applicants count on the fact that the PCE will be in the cellar, so they believe if it's located in the cellar, they need not to worry about the,
Well, that
Send
may
that
be
to me.
what they assume, but our direct experience has been even the cell, you're not protected, depends on what kind of equipment you're using, right? And if it's a source of vibration, we had an application where the noise came from the cellar and went to the 6th floor, right? Okay.
Move on? Mm-hmm. Item number 6, 2019-25BZ, 40-48 Commercial Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. Okay. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community Board recommends disapproval with 1 opposed to disapproval and 41 in favor, citing poor maintenance of the site, concern about the degree and scope of contamination, lack of information on affordable units, inadequate green space on the site. We have 1 letter in support, which I believe is from the owner. On the A finding, the site is triangular, and often such a shape creates issues with setback requirements. In terms of the as-of-right scenario, I wonder why the building is configured the way it is to not take full advantage of the portions of the site that are wide, and so as not to be hampered by the 15-foot setback requirement, similar to what the proposed project actually does. Would a lesser variance, assuming you had an A finding, that waives only the setback requirement, accomplish a less costly project? The as-of-right leaves no floor area unused, and the units are reasonable, even attractive layouts, so I'm not sure what the actual hardship as to site configuration is here. I understand that units are more valuable at the top of a tower, but that isn't a reason for a variance. The as-of-right diagram of the foundation indicates that the cellar is below design flood elevation, but this site is in an X zone according to the 2013 firm map, so there is no applicable design flood elevation. Does the architect mean the groundwater level instead of the flood level? Yeah, so that's a thing. And, but it refers to Appendix G, and so I ask what regulations in Appendix G to apply to a site in an X zone. If the cellar were below design flood elevation, the electric meters, et cetera, could not be located there according to Appendix G, except perhaps if they are dry flood proofed. I'm not even sure that you're allowed to do that if they're dry flood proofed, but anyway. According to the WRP review, the cellar will be dry flood proof, but I'm not sure if that complies with Appendix G. I just didn't want to go down that kind of wormhole. If I understand it, no uniqueness is claimed because there is the need to dewater or use friction piles, so they're not actually arguing about the groundwater level or the use of friction piles. The contamination remediation costs, I'd like to know, and of course Commissioner Shetto will get into it in more detail, what portion of that work would be required to excavate for the cellar and de-water the site absent the claimed contamination? And if the cellar will be dry flood proofed, doesn't that account for the cost that may be associated with creating a waterproof shield to prevent down gradient contamination, assuming that that contamination existed? So because of the groundwater conditions, aren't you creating the bathtub essentially that you're saying you need to protect you from contamination? On the proposed, I'd wonder, why isn't the first floor identical to the as-of-right? The proposed parking layout is much more efficient and contains a tenant drop-off area with drive-through and larger commercial space. It could be slightly reconfigured to allow, that same plan could be slightly reconfigured to allow for 6 or more parking spaces to comply with the regulations for the as-of-right. I also didn't see the argument in the statement of facts for reduction in required parking or its impact on the street system. The site is an 11-minute walk from the G train, so that's far and not that well serviced by public transit. The EAS concludes that there is a demand for 6 spaces, which should be provided on site as discussed above if there was an A finding, so it shouldn't be a complete waiver of the parking. I didn't find in the statement of facts or the EAS the analysis to establish that the proposed fits within neighborhood character. And there isn't a mention in the statement of facts about the fact that this site is in an inclusionary housing designated area entitled to purchase or generate additional floor area up to 2.43 FAR by the provision of affordable housing, or that the site is a corner lot and a through lot and may have a rear yard equivalent requirement. So those critical issues about the zoning were left off. And their curb cut locations shown, are those permitted? Because you're on this free, sort of this area near, very close to the corner. And also I'd like to know why the zoning analysis doesn't refer to the MX district regulations. It's completely sits within the 20, I think it's in the chapter 2 regulations or chapter 4 regulations, and not in the MX, which gives you a whole bunch of instructions about how to do an analysis. DEP submitted noise and air quality sign off on September 6th and September 24th, and signs off on hazmat, on the hazmat based on an E designation and the applicant's promise to enroll in the voluntary cleanup program that is managed by OER, but you can try to enroll in it. You need to be accepted, and it's not clear they've been accepted. We do have LPC sign off for archaeological, and we have Department of Parks sign off on shadows.
Open space.
Others?
Okay, I didn't see a zoning analysis chart that should be provided with regards to the roof plan for the proposed, actually for the proposed plan, let me just go through that. I think they need to show the entire site plan with areas outlining the waiver, show the entire 5th floor with the setback requirement. The first floor height is, and this goes also for the as-of-right, the first floor height is 20 feet. It's a 20-foot ceiling height for a narrow residential lobby and the parking area, which I don't believe is needed and is not adding to the value unless it is to be used, especially in the parking area, you can use it for stacking and provide more parking on site. Alternatively, I would suggest that they consider providing a residential floor over this portion, which is not being occupied by the commercial. And you can, I quickly looked at the layout, and you can easily provide at least one bedroom and another 1-2 bedroom unit on that floor, and it will be accessible from the elevator. The reason for the 20-foot is being done is to allow for this high commercial floor and also raise the building up to allow for higher view. But you can do that for the commercial, but you don't need to sacrifice that for the parking area and for a very narrow residential lobby space. You can utilize that by getting more units there. With regards to the as-of-right and with the proposed, I think, as you mentioned, the emphasis is having a base, one-story base, and then a tower. I would like them to show how that tower can be flattened out a little bit, like that means filling in more of the base, and show where the waiver starts affecting the layout of the unit in the as-of-right, and why that is prompting a proposed plan. I think they just jumped to the as-of-right with the tower. Even in the as-of-right, you can have a little bit more of a base, and then need for a tower. And I think they need to help us walk through that argument of would the as-of-right unit result in unit layouts that are not well designed, results in poor layout and therefore non-marketable returns. All of those need to be walked through before jumping to an as-of-right tower.
An as-of-right tower or a proposed tower?
Well, they've started with the basic, with an as-of-right tower. I think the base can be a little bit more taller than just a one-story base with the as-of-right tower. I think they need to go through the first exercise and then show this is the alternative as-of-right, and then using the same two as-of-rights kind of say why the proposed is needed. I think the waiver for setbacks, I can see the justification, but I'm not sure about the waiver for the FAR.
What about the A finding?
So there is uniqueness on the site in the sense, when we look at the typical factors, is this a unique site? Yes, there aren't any other triangular sites of that small. There are some that are bigger, but this one is one, I think the only one that is of that small size. There's another one. No, there is another one. The other one is a playground, so I'm discounting that.
So there is one other one in addition to the playground.
Right, yes. I'm discounting the playground because
Right.
that's a city-owned site. There is another side which is, which also, Lot 1 on block 2478 is under common ownership with the abutting lot, which does result in a lot area that is slightly larger than this site, 5,700 square foot. And it is only in M district. It's not in the MX district. So I think
That one's in a worse situation.
right. But in terms of the uniqueness, I think there are only a few sites, so, and those are the only two triangular sites. Rest of the lots in this block, though irregular, are under common ownership, especially on this subjective block. Though they are irregular, they are under common ownership and have much larger lot area than the subject site. So I accept A in terms of that there is uniqueness to the site because it's it's not a very deep triangle, it's a very shallow triangle, so I accept that. But that leads me to the question of, yes, then a setback requirement, the waivers of setbacks, I can see the reason for it, but I'm not there with regards to the FAR. Especially when inclusionary housing provision is not being used. You're jumping from the base to the max without providing inclusionary housing, so I'm not convinced there. You had raised the question about the OER. I had a similar question if they have initiated any discussions with OER with regards to cleanup, and if so, then they need to provide the scope of the cleanup and other things that has to be accepted by OER. I think we had asked, that's become our standard now based on a prior case on Jerry Street, I think.
What? The OER?
Right, OER has to kind of accept the standard of cleanup, and that has to be factored into a financial analysis.
Right, well, it's really, no. So what we did with the other ones is, for one, they submitted a volunteer application,
Right.
which OER has not accepted, and it's been a year.
Yeah, I reached out to them and haven't heard back to see
Right.
if it's been accepted yet.
So it isn't clear at all that this site qualifies, and Commissioner Shipper will get into that more. It's not clear at all that the site qualifies for voluntary cleanup. If it did, then what we do is we ask the applicant to explain to us which track they're going to go on, and then they have to commit to the track, and then they have to give us all the costs. They have to give us the work, and then the costs associated with that track, and that's the track that they have to do.
Right.
And OER, most of the time, accepts whichever track is selected, unless the site is something really, really, really hot, in which case they'll insist on a heavier track, right? So this is premature in terms of the track. We have no idea what it is they would be required to do.
I had comments on the finance, and that is, why is the ground floor lease rate per square foot more in the as of right? As of right, it's shown as $90 versus in the proposed, it's $85. And in the proposed, the commercial space will also have a rooftop area. And for financial analysis, I think it should be factored into the analysis. I don't think it has been. So the retail square footage should also include the rooftop area and the revenue generated from that. Why is the as of right? Why in the as of right at the portion of the second floor rooftop is being made available for commercial, when in the proposed, most of the rooftop is being made available for commercial? So why isn't it the same? Because the footprint of the residential is more or less in the same location as in the as of right and the proposed. So
The as of right has no commercial space for the rooftop.
No,
Yeah,
they
I'm
have not, but I'm
confused.
saying, why aren't they, because they have a commercial space on the ground floor.
Yeah, but the
They-
residential access is the roof.
There is
Right.
residential access, but my question is, why aren't they analyzing the rooftop for commercial purposes as they did in the proposed, to see if that would result in a better revenue generation.
I have a feeling they did, which is why they settled for in the as-of-right that the terraces would be attributed to the residential, because you only have a 900 square foot retail space in the as-of-right, and that's not large enough to put in a use that's going to use that rooftop. I think what they're thinking of with the 2,800 square foot retail in the proposed is that you would have a restaurant bar with rooftop, or some kind of a cafe with rooftop, but you can't fit that into a 900 square foot space. And so to have a rooftop, you can barely even fit in a staircase to access it if you have only 900 square feet. So that's why they are not considering a rooftop. I mean, it's a question to ask them. I'm sure they're answering it, but I think that's why there's two totally different layouts.
I would then say, since also in the as-of-right, the floor-to-ceiling height of the first floor is 20 feet, and as part of the as-of-right, 6 parking spaces are required. Maybe you increase the commercial's floor footprint more, and you stagger in that 20-foot floor-to-ceiling of the parking area and provide the required parking spaces, and if that helps in generating a little bit more revenue from the commercial.
I think, because this is something I commented on, that the layout that's shown on the as-of-right is completely inefficient. They did a very nice layout in the proposed where you have a drive-through, assuming that's allowed by DOT, and you get 4 parking spaces easily in the proposed. Why not get 6? And you reduce the commercial in the proposed just a little bit, but it gets all 6 parking spaces in, so there's no waiver for parking. And it's also just a better project.
Well, you would have a waiver for parking in the proposed because you need half.
Oh, so it reduced,
So you
oh,
need
no, no,
13
sorry.
spaces.
It has a demand, it meets the demand.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, yeah, you're right. It meets the demand, right.
I had another, again, with the financial, and that goes to the lease amount that is being cited for as-of-right versus the proposed. The proposed restaurant, as indicated, will have a 20-foot floor-to-ceiling height with a rooftop. So it's more of like a destination restaurant than a local restaurant. And I don't know if the comps, I don't think the comps reflect that. I kind of see it akin to those restaurants that have opened in the Hunters Point South area along the waterfront. So I think the comps should be, reflect that. Okay.
That's it? Yes?
Yeah, I think with the minimal thing, as I said, the as-of-right alternative, they should have a residential floor that is 2 to 4 floors built to the lot line with as-of-right commercial on the ground floor, and a less variance with 2 to 4 built to the lot line with a higher FAR to address if that is coming from the cleanup cost, and that's what Commissioner shed away.
So you are okay with an FAR?
If only the cleanup cost is causing that.
Oh, okay.
If not, then I'm not.
No, okay. Okay, go ahead.
So it says in the statement that the hardship is due to the irregular shaped, narrow, triangular, vacant lot with sharp apex angle. And then it goes on to say that that triangular shape constrains the floor plates by pushing them towards the wider portion of the lot. I'm not sure if that uniqueness is providing any kind of a hardship, because if you look at the floor plate and you look at what you get in the tower portion, all of the apartments are laid out well. There are no sharp angles because, of course, there's nothing developed in the apex portion. And not only that, the max FAR for this site is 2.20, and they have no problem utilizing all of that FAR in the as-of-right floor plate. So I'm not sure that there's any hardship here. That's the issue, other than cleanup costs. And I'm not sure how valid the cleanup costs are. I would definitely leave that to Commissioner Sheta to vet, to determine the degree to which all of their costs can be actually accepted by us, but I do have a question. If the costs are so severe, why aren't they in the brownfield cleanup program, where they could get some kind of, at least, tax credit towards it? Because it's not even discussed in the financials. And then, I do have financial questions, which I could wait to ask until after Commissioner Shetta speaks.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, I've been to the site and I actually seen the site. It's a vacant lot, currently used for storing equipment. It appears to be paved. The only adjacent building to the site is from the east, and it's one-story commercial. It has some cracks on the, I believe, the northern facade. I'll first go over the process of looking at sites, applying for variances because of environmental contamination. This is what we've done before, and this is what we want to do in this application and any application moving forward. First of all, we have to have a city agency approved remedial action plan, which I don't believe we have on this application so far. After one of the city agencies approved the remedial action plan, we need to get a letter from the environmental engineer of record for the project, and I'm talking general now, not just about this project. We need to get a letter from the environmental describing the scope, and we need to get a cost estimate for the remediation. In other words, you can call this cost as this is your difficulty or hardship. I need to put this extra money because of the remediation. Therefore, this cost estimate shouldn't include any other item that's related to the general scope of the construction, such as excavation of clean soil.
Should
Or
not include.
It should not.
Should not include.
It shouldn't include sheeting, for example. If you need sheeting either way, and you're using sheeting no matter what, then don't include it in the remediation cost. You should just include the cost that's relevant to the remediation. After that, we're gonna look at the scope, and I just wanna mention, make this crystal clear. Even if the scope is approved by the city agency, or OER, or any other agency, it doesn't mean that we're gonna buy this scope. If we get a dispute with the applicant on the scope, what we're gonna do is we're gonna ask the environmental engineer for the project to provide us with a signed and sealed letter mentioning that the indicated scope is the most cost effective to achieve the proposed remediation. And we'll take the scope and we'll proceed with the application. If we grant something, the grant will be conditioned on that scope. After the construction is done, we will ask the applicant to get us another letter from the same environmental engineer or whoever witnessed the construction, indicating that the scope they described initially is the same scope that they needed to implement. And if this is the case, they are good to go. If not, and there is a significant reduction in the scope, we can modify our grant. So this is general. Now back to this application. Two main components of hardship or uniqueness claimed here. The first one is the triangular shape. I'm not an expert in architecture, but it took me 15 minutes looking at the proposed versus the as of right. I don't believe the shape of the site is imposing any hardship here. The architect has the luxury of designing whatever. The site is not that very shallow, it's not that very narrow, and I believe that shape is doing nothing. It's unique, yes, but the variance doesn't call just for uniqueness, it calls for uniqueness, that's imposing hardship/difficulty. And I don't see this here with regard to the shape. Regarding the environmental, again, I haven't seen any city agency approve the cleanup plan, so we need to get this. I did look at the cost estimate. It's about $3 million on the remediation. That's what it says. Too many items included in that cost estimate that do not pertain to the remediation, such as sheeting, excavating clean material. You will need to put sheeting either way, whether you have contamination or not. You will need to excavate the clean material either way. You will need to dewater either way, because you're going down to 12 feet with the cellar. So, and honestly, to cut to the chase, I believe the main component in this $3 million cost is the recovery of the groundwater tank. I would advise the ACT, the engineer who prepared the cost estimate, in their report, they said they have a continuous clay layer underneath the entire site. Clay is impervious material. If we have a clayey site, we don't need to worry about any dewatering. We can just excavate, put foundations in, and we're done. If we have fill and sand, and then we have clayey material that's continuous over the entire site, I would urge the environmental engineer to start talking to the geotechnical engineer. And by the way, I didn't see any geotech on this project. Talk together. If you're gonna put shearing, the structural engineer or the geotechnical engineer can design this shearing to take some hydrostatic pressure, and in the meantime, the environmental engineer can utilize the shearing to work as a cutoff, meaning that it's gonna close the site. If you close the site and you need to dewater, I'm not sure if 1.5 million gallon of groundwater need to be extracted out of the site. My understanding is they evaluated this number based on 10% of the excavated volume, excavated soil volume. I didn't get any feedback on the quantities in the remediation cost estimate, and I'm asking for that to be provided. When this cost estimate is modified in the future, please, if you give me 1.4 million gallon, explain to me how you got to that. But so far, my understanding, it's 10% of the excavated soil. Yes, I'm okay with the 10%, but not of the excavated soil, of the excavated soil below the groundwater, because for the soil mass that's above the groundwater level, you need to do nothing with respect to dewatering. So there is no dewatering above the groundwater table whatsoever. So this number actually should be much less.
Which number?
The item number 8 and item number 9, if you look at the cost, the remediation cost estimate, it's page 81 in the cost estimate, and if you look at the letter from ACT, it's page 305. And it says order of magnitude, remedial cost estimate. If you look at item number 8, item number 9, it's groundwater recovery and then groundwater treatment. It's $1.20 for both, and the quantity is almost 1.5 million. So this item by itself is about 2 million. If my point is, you evaluated this based on 10% of the excavated soil. It shouldn't be the excavated soil. It should be the excavated soil below the groundwater. This is number one. Number two, and I did read this in their report, they mentioned that they assume that when they dewater today, the construction will take 20 days. That was the first assumption. And the way it's gonna work is we're gonna dewater today, When we come back tomorrow, water will be back. So we're gonna dewater the second day, and the third day, and the fourth, until the 20 days. So actually, this quantity, my imagination is, it's 10% of the excavated soil multiplied by 20. If you take the excavated soil and you replace it by the excavated soil below groundwater, probably this 1.5 million gallon number will drop to probably 1/5. Because that excavation is, let's say, 14 feet, you have just 2 or 3 feet below groundwater. So it's gonna drop by 1/5. And if you account for the idea of closing this site using sheeting, that means that you created a bathtub. It's a closed site. And this is beneficial, by the way, from the remediation point of view. I will explain it later. But if you achieve this, when you dewater today, water is not gonna be back tomorrow. Probably it's gonna be back in a week or 10 days. So over the span of construction, instead of dewatering 20 times, you just dewater 2 times. That will take the reduced amount of dewatering, the 1.5 million gallon, down by 1/10. So actually it's 1/5, and then 1/10 of that, it's probably it's 5% at most. That means that
5% of what?
of the amount given in this table, in the current cost estimate, which is about 1.5 million gallon. If we're talking about 5% of that, this is the claimed hardship. If you look at the sheeting, like I said, sheeting could move back to the regular construction because they need it either way. The excavation need to be moved back. The only items that's gonna remain here is the recovery, and this is gonna be not 1.5 million, probably 5% of that. And in addition to this, some excavation of contaminated material. Now, in ACT report, and I did go over the remedial investigation, it's confusing because they talk about the flow of the groundwater. And somewhere they mentioned that the flow is coming this way, and later on they talk about an adjacent site that's actually like sending contaminants to their side. I did look at the location. I believe the address is 29 Doe Point. And if I did look at the site that they mentioned, the Doe Point site, and if you consider the groundwater flow that they mentioned in their own report, and just take that direction, put it at Doe Point site, it's taken the contaminant actually away from their site. So there is inconsistency here between the claim that this is the direction of the groundwater flow, they are talking about eastern direction parallel to the site, and the claim that the contaminant is coming to the site from Doe Point site. And if this is the case, I would suggest that the environmental engineer consider this sheeting solution. Because if you're gonna clean up this site today, in a month after construction, you're gonna have contaminants coming from Doe Point, per your statement. If you have that, the cleanup you achieve will be gone in a month or two. So they need to consider this sheeting solution, the closed sheeting solution. I understand it could be some difficulty in installing sheet pile next to the existing building. Luckily, it's an older building. If sheet pile installation is tough, if it's tough to drive sheet pile, they could look into another options like drilled elements. It's comparable to the sheeting. So my conclusion on the cost estimate, that almost 3 million number, possibly if they consider that what I mentioned, it's gonna be evaporated practically. So I don't think, and again, dewatering wise, you need dewatering no matter what. You're digging a cellar about 3 or 4 feet below the groundwater table, so you will need dewatering. Dewatering is not needed because of the contamination. It's needed because you're going with the cellar deeper. The recovery thing could be, like I said, it could be much less. And the cost estimate for the general construction, I saw that they considered friction piles. I didn't get a geotech. The clay layer issue, the clay layer story, I got this from the environmental engineering report. But we don't have a geotech. If you're gonna use piles, pile cost will play in the equation for the cost of the as of right and the proposed, so we need to get a geotech justifying why you need pile foundation to be used on this side. In summary, I'm asking them to provide the following. Number one, we need an OER approved or any other city agency approved remedial action plan based on which they developed or evaluated the cost for the remediation. And again, the remediation shouldn't include any general construction cost, just the cost items needed to perform the remediation. The second thing, I need a site plan showing the locations of the environmental testing. And actually, they provided this in the remedial investigation plan, but we need to show the extent. They gave me the locations for the testing, and they gave me the locations where they got exceedances. So at these locations, supposedly, they exceeded the criteria that's required by the city or the state. I need to see the extent of the plume. Where is the contaminated portion of the site located? So this is missing. We need to get that. And in addition, we need to, they mentioned 4 underground storage tanks, and they said they are approximately located, I believe, in the western section of the site. I'm not sure what does approximate. You prepared the remedial action plan here, and you came up with a number, 2.9 million for remediation. And you're telling me that you don't know where are these 4 underground tanks located? Roughly, they are just in the western portion. And the confusing thing, when you look at the exceedances, they are not in the western portion, meaning that these tanks are actually not leaking. So I'm not sure where from the contaminant is coming. We need to get signed and sealed letter, but let's leave this to the end. If we agree on some sort of scope, like I said, I will need to get a signed and sealed letter from the environmental engineer certifying that the scope that they are presenting to us is, number one, approved by city agency, and number two, is the most cost-effective way to achieve the target cleanup. And we'll take that. I need to get a geotech because of the piling. I need to get the excavation support system drawings and the watering drawings. And like I said, for any variance case, including this one, if they certify that this scope is urgently needed, we're not gonna say no, we'll take it. But any grant that will be made on this case will be subject to a condition that this scope shall be implemented at the end.
Okay. But what I'm hearing is, so that's a lot of consultants and a lot of work, but I think maybe first step is the issue that you're talking about, that if in fact the costs that are really related to this cleanup are just the dewatering, because that's the $1.5 million almost, right?
It's not the dewatering, it's when you dewater a clean site, you extract the water and just dump it somewhere.
Right.
Maybe in the city sewer system.
The treatment and disposal, right.
You do minor treatment, and then you send this water to the city system, and you pay like some sort of fees for that. But if you have a contaminated site, you have to take this groundwater, and sometimes even you might need to put them in drums and dispose them somewhere. That's what they are calling it recovery here. And they are considering 1.4 million gallons. The reason for that huge number, in my opinion, is 2 things. Number one, they are considering 10% of the entire excavation that's gonna be done.
Right.
It shouldn't be that. It should be just the portion of the excavation below groundwater. Because above groundwater, you're not gonna be able to get any waters because soil over there is not 100% saturated. It's partially saturated. You cannot claim that you're gonna dewater there. Even when we put a well or a well point system, the screen where the groundwater enters that well and get extracted out, the screen doesn't start above groundwater. It should start below groundwater and probably 2 or 3 feet, and even below the lowered groundwater. So if groundwater is here, you put a well, you don't open the screen in the dry, you open it below the groundwater. And if you're gonna take this 2 feet down, you don't even open the screen within the 2 feet drawdown, you open the screen below that. Therefore, they cannot claim that they are drying the entire soil column, it's just below groundwater.
So that, my question is, before they get into hiring the geotech, going to OER and getting an approved RAP and all of this is a very expensive process, right? The main question right now is the $3 million, about $1.5 million of which is treatment of the groundwater that they're measuring as $1 per gallon, right? For removal or whatever it is, treatment of this special contaminated groundwater. And what you're saying is it's not anywhere near 1.5 million gallons. It's way less than that because they shouldn't be taking it from the top. They should be taking it from the 2 feet of groundwater down to the excavated 12-foot point.
It's not actually just 1.5 million. It's the 1.5 million plus the cost for the shearing, plus the cost for the excavation.
Right, but
for the
let me
clean
just
work.
finish it. So if they were to respond to that simple question tomorrow, because basically what you're saying is these remediation costs seem extreme because you're measuring the wrong amount of dewatering, the wrong amount of gallons of dewatering, and you're not applying the right methodology because you're ignoring the clay level, you're ignoring the idea of sheeting as being necessary anyway, and in addition would create this bathtub that would reduce the amount of required dewatering. It seems that if those are the remediation costs, without going deeper into it, then we're kind of done. We know what the remediation costs are. They're, instead of being 3 million, they're 400,000, they're 300,000, whatever they are. That's a completely different thing. And so then the question is there actually a hardship presented by the contamination, if the contamination even exists? Then if they want, if now you brought the cost of the remediation down to something that's quite low, then they have to look at what they might be entitled to in terms of a variance, because I think everyone is agreeing more or less that there's not much of a shape issue on the site. So in which case now, then they have to look at whether they want to go through the expense of hiring the geotech, going to OER for determining whether or not it's a track 1 or a track 3 cleanup and all of that sort of stuff, because I don't want them off on some tangent. We don't want this to be like another project we had where 6 hearings in of going through all of those exercises, we're not persuaded that they actually have adequately burdened site to justify a variance. So I think it needs to be sort of nipped in the bud right away. And they should respond to those very specific statements that you've made, that the amount of groundwater that's proposed to be removed isn't all contaminated, shouldn't all be considered, measured in terms of the remediation, and that some other things that are being done on the site that's in that cost estimate that was supplied to us is actually necessary for the base construction, which they also showed us needs to be dry flood-proofed. So that's another thing that may go to taking that out of the remediation costs and moving that into the general construction costs, which can't be applied to the hardship.
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yes.
So then I just want to move on to Commissioner Shavetta, who hasn't spoken yet, and then we'll, do you want to?
For the
And come back, and then come back
financials?
to you, yeah, because we're still in the A.
So, I agree with that guidance with regard to the remediation. I think that would be the best way to handle that. As the preceding commissioners have stated, I have not been convinced by the uniqueness. Well, the property is unique in the fact that it is shaped uniquely, but I don't believe that that has a hardship. As Commissioner Hartley Brown stated, they are able to build to the max FAR, and also in a way that's not necessarily undesirable. Not to mention that the view of all of these properties that they're going to enjoy, again, that's not necessarily relevant right now, but I just don't see, they haven't made the argument that this shape, along with this shape creates a finding. I can't speak to, again, I accept the guidance of the chair and Commissioner Shetta with regard to the environmental remediation portion. And I have nothing further to add. I think we really flushed this out at this point.
Commissioner Hartley Brown.
So, I just want to say that the financials clearly are going to change when the remediation costs are reduced. And the costs that are transferred over into the regular costs, I think that the applicant and financial rep have to be mindful of going over the accepted price per square foot to build this building. And so they're already at $348 a square foot of base construction costs, hard costs, and $365 for the proposed. I don't want them to just shift costs around, and then before you know it, your base construction costs are over $400 a square foot, and then are out of the generally accepted costs per square foot to build a residential building with retail. So I don't want it to have higher than normal base construction costs. And so this is what I'm saying. Make sure they don't go over Marshall and Swift's generally accepted construction costs, and they should show us that. And don't not include the soft costs when you're considering the total cost factor and comparing it to Marshall and Swift, because Marshall and Swift covers a good deal of the soft costs. So that's just off the bat. Now, in particulars, I agree with Commissioner Shanda that the retail comparables might not be totally comparable without the adjustments, because there is cellar space and we don't know if the comps have cellar space. And also for the proposed, there is rooftop space, and I'm pretty sure from looking at those comparables that there isn't any rooftop space. So there definitely has to be upward adjustments or even an addition of better comparables in terms of comparability. And that will probably lead to a higher price per square foot. For the parking spaces, I feel that they are taking the gross and then they're giving us a net income per month per spot. And then they're including that net income into the gross income for the whole project, which then also gets deducted for management and other expenses. So it seems like there's a double dipping on the expenses towards the parking, and I don't know why. So they need to explain to us why they're reducing the gross income for parking before even including it into the total gross income. For the residential, I think there's a questionable adjustment there that they're using as a counterbalance to the outdoor space when they're talking about how, yes, the comps have outdoor space, but, you know, the comps also have not such good layouts. That's not true at all. The layouts for these subject apartments are just fine. And so what I want them to do is go through the as-of-right and the proposed plans and identify the outdoor space, quantify the outdoor space for every apartment in terms of square footage, and then give us their methodology for valuing that outdoor space and add it into the income for the month for the indoor space. And then they need to look at both stacking plans and make sure that the stacking plans are consistent both within and also compared against the proposed stacking class, because you have lots of inconsistencies where you have units that are exactly alike in both sets of plans that are priced differently, even though they're located on the same floor. And you also have units, the same line of unit, that floor by floor are inconsistently priced in relationship to each other, having nothing to do with outdoor space. So I think it would be better if they break everything down and just go step by step. Then they'll be able to see the inconsistencies and correct them. I feel that if they reduce those construction costs, the special construction costs, the remediation costs, then it is possible that the as of right is going to be viable. In which case, then I don't know if there is a unique hardship affecting this site.
Okay.
We done? This concludes the public review session for October 21st, 2019.
Thank you, everybody.